hum of the airstrip was constant, like a pulse running through the earth. Sunlight beat down on the tarmac, bouncing off polished metal and gleaming canopies. Ground crews bustled, barked orders, and wiped grease from their forearms as jets lined up for daily checks. The base was alive, loud, and orderly until everything stopped. A girl stepped onto the runway. She didn't wear a flight suit, no insignia, just dusty jeans, desert boots, and a faded black ball cap pulled low. Her face was half-shadowed, but her eyes scanned the airfield with quiet certainty, like she had every right to be there. In her right hand, she carried a flight helmet, clean, scratched, and very used. Not decorative, personal. An older man stood nearby, arms crossed, silver hair trimmed tight to regulation. Colonel Harrington. His weathered face twisted with something between amusement and disbelief. "She says she flew it," he muttered to the captain beside him. A short burst of laughter rolled through the group of officers. The jet behind her, an F-16 Falcon, rested in pristine condition, its nose pointed toward the sun like it knew the spotlight was on. It had been flown 2 nights ago for a test sim, but according to base records, no active pilot had signed it out. No one could explain the perfect flight log. No one except the girl now walking straight toward the briefing hall, like she owned a key to every door. She stopped at the entrance, helmet under one arm, and spoke without raising her voice. "I'm here for my slot in the Thunder Canyon sim." Murmurs. A scoff. The captain leaned closer to Harrington. "There's no civilian clearance for that." Colonel Harrington stepped forward, voice firm. "You're not on the roster. You're not on any roster. Who authorized you?" The girl looked him in the eye. Congressional Initiative 6-43. Independent Civilian to Military Integration Clause. You signed the base protocol update last year. He blinked. "That clause doesn't make you a pilot." "I never said I wasn't one." "Badge." She didn't answer. "Then you're wasting everyone's time." She stood there a second too long, long enough for silence to feel like tension, then nodded once and walked off. No protest, no visible shame, just silence, but the kind of silence that held heat under it. Pressure, a ticking sound no one else heard. In the officers' lounge, behind reinforced glass, Harrington shook his head. "Entitled kids think this is a video game." "She flew it," someone said. "Simulator, maybe." "No, the Falcon. 2 nights ago. The post-op logs are clean. Whoever was flew like they were born in the sky." Harrington didn't respond. He was already walking away, back in the far west end of the base, past the maintenance hangars and unused storage bays. The girl stepped into a cold, dim supply room that reeked of oil and old canvas. Her temporary bunk was little more than a cot and a metal shelf. She set the helmet down gently, like it held something sacred. She unzipped her jacket, pulled out a black cloth pouch. Inside was a single patch, edges burned and frayed, the silver stitching of a Delta Squadron insignia still gleaming through soot. She held it for a moment, just looking. Her fingers trembled, just slightly. Her name was Avery Locke, 26. Flight tested in 5 states. Logged more air hours than half the Air Force Academy cadets in her year. She'd studied in scrapyards, taken flying lessons from civilian war vets, flown bush planes and frozen mountains to earn respect in pieces. Her father had been a legend in the sky, a leader of Delta Squadron, and her only compass. He'd died in a mission no one talked about. His remains were never found. She'd been 17. One phone call and her world went hollow. Now she stood, 10 years later, facing the same kind of silence, the kind that follows a knock that never gets answered. She closed her eyes. The room swayed a little. "You don't belong here," a voice whispered in her head. It sounded like her old flight instructor in Wyoming, right after she landed a cargo plane on a makeshift ice strip in a blizzard. He doubted her too, until she pulled him out of that storm when his own engine failed. She clenched the patch, breath shallow. There were always men like Harrington. Always. They didn't just question her skills, they questioned her presence, her existence in their world. A knock sounded behind her. She turned, surprised. No one. On the shelf outside her door, Tucked behind an oil can sat a small slip of paper, a printed checklist. Flight Authorization Protocol for Simulator Room 3A. Signed, stamped, cleared. At the bottom, scribbled in grease pencil handwriting. Midnight. Quiet entry. No alarms. Initialed. Tex. She glanced across the airfield. On the far end, by a gutted C-130, stood a figure, a tall man in a brown cap, long gray beard, stained overalls. A civilian technician, old school. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just nodded once, slow. Avery folded the checklist and slipped it into her helmet lining. She sat on the edge of the cot, helmet in her lap, badge clutched in her hand. The air inside the room was thick, quiet, but something in her had started to move. She looked out the window. The Falcon still stood wings silent, like it too was waiting for permission to rise. Outside, wind picked up, stirring the dust. A storm was building in the west. Rain lashed the base in slanted sheets, wind howling through metal structures and rattling loose wires on the comm tower. The floodlights cast long, trembling shadows across the tarmac. Thunder rolled, low and distant, as if the sky itself was watching. Avery Locke moved through the storm like a ghost. Her hood was pulled tight, checklist tucked beneath her jacket, boots silent on wet concrete. Midnight, exactly as the note had said. The simulator building loomed ahead, gray and cold, lit only by an emergency strip of flickering LEDs near the roofline. One security camera spun slowly on its post, then paused, dead center on the door she was walking toward. She didn't hesitate. The door gave a low groan as she eased open. Inside, the air was dry and humming. A technician's thermos still sat on a console, steam long gone. Panels blinked amber, red, and green in silent rhythms. She stepped through the narrow hallway toward Simulator Room 3A, passing old posters, asterisk, earn your wings, defend the sky. Asterisk, the room greeted her with quiet authority. A replica F-16 cockpit sat mounted on a hydraulic cradle, surrounded by a 360-degree projection dome. It looked like a creature waiting to be fed or awakened. Avery set her helmet down on the edge of the seat. The screen flickered. System booted. Voice prompt asterisk asterisk. Flight profile. Thunder Canyon. Confirm. Asterisk. She slid into the seat, hands moving with trained precision. Switches flipped. Harness clicked. The canopy lowered. Thunder Canyon wasn't just a sim, it was a gauntlet. High-speed canyon run. Altitude drops, blind turns, gust tunnels, and digital SAMs firing heat seekers. It had a 12% pass rate, mostly from veterans. The last female pilot to attempt it had flamed out halfway through. Avery knew the top brass had chosen it to break her. She wasn't here to bend. The dome around her flared into color. Sky, rock, dust. The simulated sun hung high over a jagged ravine that twisted like a serpent. Wind whistled through tight corners. Static buzz in her headset. Entering Thunder Canyon. Weapons cold. Begin maneuver. The jet launched. Avery gripped the throttle and dropped elevation fast, hugging the rock walls. Her breath synced with emotion, controlled, steady. She flew low, a blur in the shadows. The G-forces in the cradle strained her core, but her body adapted without flinch. Her hands knew every turn before the computer projected it. She heard his voice again. Her father's. Asterisk, listen to the wind before the warning lights. Asterisk, a memory surged. Her sitting on his lap at 7, giggling as he pointed at radar screens. He smelled of jet fuel and coffee. His eyes, always locked on the horizon. She blinked, the canyon flashing back around her. The HUD glitched. Her artificial horizon blinked twice, then blacked out. She toggled the backup. Nothing. No radar. No NAV. It wasn't part of the sim. Someone had overridden the system. She bit her lip, eyes flicking altitude. She had seconds. One wrong turn, and the cradle would simulate a crash so violent it'd knock her out cold. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but her hands stayed steady. No nav. No radar. Just instinct. Asterisk, what do you hear? Asterisk, Her father's question returned. She silenced the cockpit. No voices. No alerts. Just the sound of wind, slightly higher pitched on the left. She banked right. A sharp S-curve rose ahead, rock pillars stabbing the air like spears. She twisted the Falcon sideways, scraped past them with inches to spare. The cradle creaked under force. Another glitch. The enemy SAM lock flashed red, closer than it should be. She dived. Missile passed overhead. She climbed sharply, looped into the upper canyon, and rolled into the flat, the place most failed. She had one shot to do what no one else had. Her father had taught her a maneuver they never logged. The lock spiral. He'd said it was suicidal on paper. No flight sim allowed it. But she wasn't flying for paper anymore. She yanked the throttle, spun the rudder hard, kicked the nose into a corkscrew. The jet twisted midair, forcing the cradle to simulate GS beyond normal capacity. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel. The enemy fighters chasing her clipped the edge of the canyon wall. Simulated fireballs erupted. The screen flashed. Enemy eliminated. Time 5:42. Silence. Avery sat, soaked in sweat, chest heaving. The cradle slowed to neutral. Then everything powered down. She opened the canopy slowly. No alarms. No technicians. Just stillness. Until a voice crackled through the comm. Who authorized that sim? She froze. The voice wasn't angry. It was calm, measured, a little too curious. This is General Sanderson. I want to know who just ran Thunder Canyon and didn't die. Avery pulled her helmet off. No answer. The screen inside the sim booth remained blank. On the upper level, behind a tinted glass wall, a shadow moved. General Sanderson stood with arms behind his back, a slight frown on his face, watching her like she was a riddle no one had solved yet. He didn't speak. He just watched. Avery stepped off the sim cradle, legs slightly unsteady, and walked to the exit. She opened the door into the rain. Colonel Harrington stood there, holding her checklist. I should have you arrested, he said, voice low and quiet. She said nothing. He raised a paper in his hand. Where'd you get clearance? She reached into her jacket and pulled out the singed Delta Squadron badge. Held it up. Harrington's face changed, barely, but it did. That's not something you just find. I didn't, she said. He looked at her for a long moment, like he was seeing something from another time. She walked past him, into the dark. Behind her, the general tapped the comm. Give me her full file. Now! Dawn cracked open over the airbase in quiet defiance, bleeding soft gold over rows of fighter jets lined like resting predators. The storm had passed, but puddles mirrored the sky, and steam lifted from sun-warmed tarmac like breath held too long. The ground crews were already moving, tight-lipped, alert, sensing something different in the air. Something unspoken. Avery Locke stood on the far edge of the runway, helmet under arm, jumpsuit zipped high, Delta Squadron badge stitched just above her heart. Her expression was steel, but her chest tightened with every passing second. She wasn't scheduled for this. No briefing. No orders. Just a general summons, and a short line delivered through a junior officer. Asterisk, you're flying today. Asterisk. Now. 3 combat-ready jets roared to life across the strip. Pilots climbed into cockpits with the cocky energy of men who'd never had to prove their right to be there. Among them, Captain Reese, Harrington's protege, known for his sharp tongue and sharper turns. He glanced across the field, saw Avery, and sneered through his visor. Didn't realize the day was a career fair. Avery didn't flinch. She clipped her gloves, walked toward her assigned Falcon. Every step echoed louder than it should have, like the runway was watching. Up in the tower, General Sanderson watched through binoculars, face unreadable. Behind him, Colonel Harrington stood stiffly, arms crossed, jaw locked in place. This is a training exercise, Harrington said. Why put her up now? Sanderson didn't answer. He lowered the binoculars and turned to the flight controller. Open up grid 7. Thunder formation. Let's see what she does when the sky pushes back. Avery climbed into the cockpit, hands moving like music. Switches, toggles, harness, visor. The engine roared to life beneath her. For a moment, she was no longer on the ground. Falcon 3, clear for takeoff, the tower crackled. Copy, she replied, voice even. The wheels left the earth. Air wrapped around her like an old friend. Familiar, dangerous, thrilling. She banked left, sliding into formation behind the others. They soared together in tight diamond formation over the nearby mountain range. Then the drill kicked in, a simulated bogey, closing fast. Mock missiles, evasive orders. Captain Reese peeled left with practiced arrogance. Try not to faint, Falcon 3, he quipped over comms. Avery said nothing. She watched the terrain shift, watched the others burn fuel like they were bulletproof. Her warning light blinked. She frowned. No reason. No trigger. Her system flashed a NAV malfunction, then shut off. Again, the same as in the sim. Someone was playing games. In the tower, Tex burst through the side door, boots wet, hands black with oil. He stormed to the comm panel. Someone just triggered a scramble protocol on her bird, he growled. That's not a glitch. Sanderson didn't move. Let's see if she can handle it. She shouldn't have to, Tex snapped. On the screen, Avery's Falcon began to veer slightly. Altimeter frozen. Compass spinning. She exhaled slow, steady, eyes on the mountains. Then she cut power just enough to drop altitude and forced a hard roll, rebooting the system manually in mid-flight. Alarms went silent. When they returned, they came back clean. Below her, 2 jets circled wide, pretending to chase invisible targets. Avery dug beneath them, skimming close to the canyon edge. The same terrain from the simulator, only real now. Real wind, real steel, real risk. Reese spotted her on radar. Falcon 3's gone rogue. Negative, Avery replied calmly, repositioning for a tactical advantage. You're off mission. No, she said. I'm ahead of it. She locked onto his 6 without him realizing. A clean move, swift and quiet. Reese cursed, pulled hard right, tried to shake her. Avery matched him turn for turn. In the tower, the younger officers leaned in, stunned. She's walking him. Is that the spiral? Avery wasn't done. She pulled vertical, flipped into a high yo-yo turn, and came down fast, tagging both remaining jets in under 10 seconds. A long silence followed. Upstairs, Sanderson leaned into the mic. Falcon 3 report status. Targets neutralized, returning to formation. The general nodded once, but Harrington stepped forward. She shouldn't be here. She's not one of us. Sanderson turned, voice like a blade. She's more one of us than half the men you trained. On the tarmac, Avery landed clean, slid back the canopy, stood tall in the seat as the silence rolled toward her. Crew members froze. Officers stared. A few nodded, slow, quiet acknowledgments, the kind that meant everything. Tex waited at the bottom of the ladder, arms crossed. Almost looked like you knew what you were doing, he said. Avery smirked, breath shaky. Almost. Sanderson walked across the tarmac toward her, each step deliberate. He stopped 2 feet away. Lieutenant Locke, he said, loud enough for the others to hear. Welcome to Delta Squadron. Behind them, Harrington stood still, wind tugging at his uniform. Avery turned to face him. His voice was low, almost hesitant. He used to say you'd outrun us all. She looked him in the eyes. I'm not here to outrun anyone, she said. I'm here to fly. She walked past him without waiting for a reply. From above, the jets reflected in a puddle shimmered like ghosts watching her claim the sky. Night fell slow and heavy over the base, the sky a deep violet bruise of stars. The heat of the day had slipped into the cracks of steel hangars and rested under the wings of sleeping jets. But in the far corner of the airstrip, where no drills ran and no orders barked, a single engine still whispered. Avery Locke stood beneath the shadow of her Falcon, her fingers trailing lightly over the cool fuselage, tracing a scar along its flank from a past dogfight. She wasn't supposed to have access tonight. She hadn't asked, but Tex had left the hangar door open, and in this world, that counted as permission. Her flight suit hung loose around her waist, sweat darkening her undershirt, hair tied back in a rough knot. Her hands smelled like hydraulic oil. Her eyes were clear and tired and sharper than they'd ever been. Tex emerged from behind a toolbox, holding a rag and a socket wrench, his posture casual, but his eyes watching her the way a father watches a child who's just done something dangerous and brilliant. "You always this quiet after raising hell in the sky?" he asked. She didn't look away from the jet. "No, just thinking." "About what?" "If I belong here now, or if I just broke something too old to bend." Tex chuckled. "You didn't break it. You reminded it what it used to be." Avery leaned against the jet, arms folded. "I didn't want it like this. I just wanted to fly. Prove I was more than a name." Tex wiped his hands. "You proved it. And more. You made M-Watch. Made MC." She looked down. "They'll forget. People like Harrington always do." Tex reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. Edges curled from years of sweat and sun. He handed it to her. 3 men in flight suits, arms around each other, laughing like war hadn't happened yet. One was Tex, 30 years younger, eyes full of trouble. One was Harrington, straight-backed and unscarred. And the third, Avery ran her fingers over her father's face. It didn't sting like it used to. It felt grounding. "He said you were the best of them," she whispered. Tex grinned. He lied. "I was the second best. He was the first." They stood there in silence, the kind that only comes when grief is no longer a wound, but a shared memory, a weight you don't carry alone anymore. Behind them, a soft voice cleared. They turned. General Sanderson stood at the hangar entrance, arms at his sides, expression unreadable. He stepped forward slowly, boots echoing on the concrete. "I just got the final report," he said. "Telemetry confirms what we saw. You completed a canyon run in a live flight scenario under a disabled NAV system. That's never been done." Avery nodded once, unsure if she was being congratulated or condemned. Sanderson stepped closer. "You didn't just earn a flight badge, Lieutenant Locke. You earned their silence, and eventually their respect." She raised an eyebrow. "That why you're here? To offer me a patch and a press statement?" "No," he said. "I'm here because I owe your father a debt, one I can finally begin to repay." He held out a small, cloth-wrapped box. Avery took it, slow. Inside lay a badge, new, polished, unmistakable. Delta Squadron's crest, her name engraved beneath it. "I've never issued one outside the Academy pipeline," Sanderson said. "But you didn't come from a pipeline. You came from fire." Her throat tightened. "Thank you, sir." He held her gaze. "There's one more thing. The Falcon you flew? It's yours now. Permanently assigned. Paint your name on it." She blinked. "Why?" "Because no one else has the nerve to fly it after today." Sanderson turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with a badge in her hand and the weight of everything she'd fought for settling slowly into her bones. Tex whistled low. "Well, damn. You break every rule in the book and they give you the plane." "I didn't break the rules," she said. "I just flew past them." They laughed, soft, tired laughter, the kind that comes at the end of a long battle. The overhead lights buzzed as they dimmed, leaving only the stars and the shape of her jet under the open sky. Avery stepped forward, climbed the ladder one rung at a time, and eased into the cockpit. She placed a badge on the dashboard, just beneath the HUD. A reminder, a promise. The night wind swept through the hangar, tugging at the canvas covers and stirring the flags overhead. And somewhere deep in her chest, the silence she'd carried for 10 years finally broke. Not with noise, but with stillness. The kind that only comes after the fight is done, and the sky finally lets you belong.